Welcome back to the channel, Say What's Real TV. This review is for American Gigolo, Season 1, Episode 7, Atomic. Ooh-wee, you guys. Episode 7, it was a decent episode, and we finally got some kind of answers to move this story along. We had a few people trying to bring the episode down. Their scenes were meaningless. They were dry as hell, but we gonna push through like we do. But hey, I know someone out there remembers me asking in episode 5 if McGregor was the driver that Olga put out her car in the desert and left him on the side of the road. But we gonna get into this episode here. So we open up the episode exactly where we left off last week. We have Isabelle. She's in Julian's apartment, and she wants to know why the police are coming to her, asking her about Lisa Beck. So Julian tells her Olga left her a Lisa Beck file, and that's why they're asking questions about it. And she was like, Olga had dementia, and she's trying to convince Julian that Olga had this dementia and she didn't know what the hell was going on. She could have left him a pair of panties or some bullshit. She don't know what the hell was going on. So, and she wants Julian to try to let it go, leave it alone. Julian was like, look, I've lost 15 years of my life. I was set up. And hell, I just got out of jail, so I'm not going to let it go. And how dare you even suggest it? So she was like, well, that's what me and Lorenzo are for. We're here for you. We're like home. And she suggests somewhat that he come back and work for her. And he's like, oh, hell no. That's not what I want. That's not my lifestyle. I'm not doing that. And she gets in her little feelings and she's like, oh, so what you think you're better than us? What you think we just a couple of hustlers? And she's like, do you know who I am? Like, girl, don't nobody care nothing about you, Isabelle. And she was like, fuck you, Julian, fuck you. And by the way, you think that little cop your friend? She's not your friend, Julian. She gets ready to leave and gets to the door and says, and stop talking to the police because basically you're messing up my money. We have Richard and Michelle. They are over there arguing because Michelle has a problem with Panish being the one handling the whole Colin situation. And Richard tells her that he is the best person for the job right now. And she was like, well, how can you trust him? And Richard says, well, I don't trust him and I don't fucking trust you either. She says, fuck you. She says he is the one that set John up. As if he cares. Richard does not care about John being set up. So Richard says, well, yeah, he had to do that because he was trying to protect your ass. And Richard told her that last week. So I don't know why we keep reiterating the same shit. So Richard asked her, have you been with John since he's been out of jail? She goes through these flashbacks in her head because she knows that we know her ass has been with John. Has she slept with John? No, she has not. But she has been with John. But she blatantly lies to Richard's face. So we head over there to Detective Sunday, and she's going through the Lisa Beck file. And she makes a phone call for someone to do a background check, and she gives some addresses and names to the person. And then one of the deputies comes in and tells her she has a visitor and tells her that it's Paloma Aguilar. We know that is the girl from the gym. And she was like, oh, hell. So she goes out to meet her in the lobby of the precinct or whatever, and Paloma standing there waving with her little short blue dress on, and Detective Sunday is like, what are you doing here? She was like, excuse me, we had a date. What, baby, when I tell you, Paloma, like, I ain't even playing with you because we had a date, you stood me up, so here I am, basically. Like, what's up? Detective Sunday said, didn't you get my text? And she was like, I sure did not. So she looks at her phone and see that she forgot to hit send. So she was like, oh. So she takes Paloma back to her office and apologizes and tells her she's overwhelmed with a particular case. So Paloma, with her nosy ass, says, oh, is that the case over there you're working on? And she said, oh, as a matter of fact, and she gets up and turns the board around. And she said, I can't talk about that. And Paloma was like, why not? She said, well, it's an open case, privacy, confidentiality, and it's, you can't talk about it. But excuse me, ma'am, you've brought like 30 people in your office to look at this same one board. And I've said every week, how are you able to talk about an open case, open murder investigation? Now all of a sudden, you can't talk about it. So she said, there it is. There's the look. And Paloma was like, what look? I didn't give a look. And she's like, usually the people who give the look don't know they're giving the look. So they going back and forth about the look. And Paloma was like, it seems like you're using old cases to try to solve our case before you get all the facts. Detective Sunday says, well, let me give you some facts. She sits down and tells this girl her whole life story, talking about, I'm 60 years old. I've been a cop for 37 years. My father was a cop. He was also an alcoholic. My brother, he was an addict. They're both dead. I'm like, did she have to say it like that? She says that her mother left them when they were kids and she just was left to fend for two addicts, without any help or nobody to help her or, look after her or whatever. Paloma said, why are you telling me all of that? She said, I have baggage. I said, this lady is so weird. She is so weird. Like, who does that? Like, okay, you got baggage, and Paloma was basically trying to say, it's cool, like it can be worked out. But it seemed to me like she's chasing behind Detective Sunday. And why? Like, why would you be chasing behind her? It seemed like it would be the other way around. So Detective Sunday gets this phone call and she was like, I got to take this. So Paloma was like, well, all right, then you have my number. You just call me, basically when you get time, because Detective Sunday don't have the time. Detective Sunday quickly answers the phone and it's Ernie, the one she called to get the background information for Lisa Beck. So we head over there to Julian's house and he's going through the Lisa Beck folder. So he starts reminiscing to the day that Isabelle came to want to play with him, and he sees all of this stuff all over her dress. So he is like, what is all of this? So they go through the house and he's noticing that there's blood all throughout the house. So he goes in the bathroom door, and I guess he discovers Lisa's body in the tub. We head back over there to Michelle and Stratton, and she's throwing out her pills and stuff. She took her wig off and slung it across the room. She actually should have been wearing her hair the whole time because it looks much better the way it is naturally. So he comes in and he's like, you've been wearing this wig since you've been pregnant. I never understood that. So he asks her, is Colin his son? So I guess she must have slightly nodded her head in a no response, because I didn't hear anything and I barely saw it. So I don't know. So he went to naming all the different stuff he has done for Colin since he was born, basically saying he's done everything. So he asked her, what, the sperm donor want to come in now and play the father? Stratton said, I don't think so. Richard wants to know, has Michelle always been pretending with him? And basically, the answer is yes. She tells him she wanted a better life for her son, and she wanted a better life. We all know that Richard has a lot of money, so hey, it is what it is. So he wants to know how much money did she spend on John when they had sex, and Michelle told him she never had to pay him because it wasn't about sex. Like, basically, they were in love. So he in his feelings, he like, oh, so you in love with a prostitute. You in love with somebody who make money using his penis. So, okay. So, they still going back and forth. And she tells him, I was nothing but a prop to you, so stop acting like you all hurt and shit. And basically, you always loved them watches more than you love me. And she left him standing there looking like a fool. She said, you just mad because your prize whore slept with somebody else. So we see Panish. He's sitting in his trunk. He's staring at the bag of money, contemplating, acting like I don't know if he wants to run with the money or I don't know what he's thinking about. So he ends up making the phone call to McGregor. McGregor answers and he tells him, I have it. I have the money. It took me a while to get it. Now, why he telling that damn lie? Stratton had that money ready within minutes. You hear me? That man got so much money. So anyway, he says, I do have it. And where do you want to meet? Where am I going? You got Julian and Lindsay. They're sitting out by the beach having some lunch. And she's trying to talk to Julian, but she can tell Julian is in La La Land. His mind is somewhere else. And Julian deflects by, trying to be humorous. And he says maybe he just likes seeing her smile and all this and that. And she was just telling him, like, when you got stuff on your mind, it helps if you just talk about it. So Julian is like, yeah, I'll keep that in mind. So, those two, they have their little friendly banner. I think they're cute together. I don't know if Julian be flirting with Lindsay or not, but I could see them hooking up maybe if nothing bad happens. As Julian and Lindsay are going back to the house, someone calls out Julian's name, and it's Lorenzo. He's telling Julian, I've been calling you, leaving messages and whatever, and you're not returning my calls. So Julian says, what are you doing here, Lorenzo? He said, like I said, you're not returning my calls. So Julian tells him, he said, the reason I have not responded or returned any of your calls is because I was in jail. So Lorenzo says, well, what happened? And Julian told him, don't worry about it. Child, so Lorenzo jumped out his truck and he said, you better turn your narrow ass around. Don't you dare tell me not to worry about it. I worried about you for 15 years when you were locked up. That's all I ever do is worry about you. I'm your brother. Remember, I love you. So don't you ever disrespect me and tell me what not to worry about. Julian looking around, embarrassed and shit, like, all right, bro, okay, calm down. So now Julian feels obligated to tell Lorenzo what's been going on with him. So he tells him that about Elizabeth and Colin and how he just found out that he has a child. And Lorenzo's looking shocked, like, you got a child? Like, with who? He tells him Michelle, and how Michelle came to him one day and told him he was the dad and that Colin needed help. He was in trouble, so he went and hit the pavement, knocking on doors, going all over the city trying to find him. And one day he saw some older guy putting Colin in the back of his car. So Lorenzo was like, well, you have any kind of description of anything or whatever? And he's like, I just remember a red BMW. I remember the tattoo on his hand. That's about all he can remember. So they're just sitting there thinking about it. And Lorenzo apologizes to him and says, wow, I still can't believe you have a child. We get this real quick scene with McGregor. He's in the hotel with Colin. He's looking out the window. I guess he's waiting for Panish to get there with the money. As he's looking out the window, we see Colin watching him look out the window, but then he quickly pretends like he's sleeping when McGregor comes back to sit on the bed. Ernie brings Detective Sunday the file back about Lisa Beck, and she quickly jumps on the phone and calls Julian and tells him, can he come down to her office? She has something she wants to show him in person. They show this brief scene of Michelle. She's having all these different flashbacks of her and Julian and what has happened in the past. We move on from that. Julian, he makes it down to the precinct to talk to Detective Sunday. She hands him the information that she got from Ernie. He sits down and looks at it, and come to find out, Lisa Beck and Janet Holmes, the lady that he went to prison for 15 years ago, they are sisters. We finally got something, guys. The two of them are sisters, and apparently Janet tried to link up with some of Olga's peepers so she can find out what happened to her sister in Olga's house. So Detective Sunday gave Julian his phone list of records of Janet's from back then to see who she had been calling prior to her death. And Julian looked over the list and he found a name that was familiar to him, one of his clients, Gail St. John. It's actually the lady that we saw him with when he saw Michelle with Stratton when they were having that business meeting that time. So Detective Sunday says, well, we need to pay her a visit. And Julian is like, no, I haven't seen her in years, and I don't want to show up talking to her with a homicide detective. You know, it's been a long time since I've seen her. Just allow me to go by myself. So Detective Sunday, she agrees. So Lorenzo goes back over there to Isabel's and They get to talking about Julian, and Isabel says he's just so stubborn, and how he used to get 2 manicures a week, and now he wants to work at some greasy restaurant, and Lorenzo is kind of defending him and saying, he's not that person anymore. Just try to cut him some slack. He has a lot going on. And he tells her that Julian just got out of jail because the Strattons pulled some power play and all of this and that. And Isabel was like, he just needs to run far, far away from Michelle. So Lorenzo, running off at his mouth, telling every goddamn thing, dropping the T, tells her that that's going to be hard for him to do because he now had, well, not now, but he has a child with Michelle and a 15-year-old child. So Isabel's like, okay, and so he's a stranger to the child, like it shouldn't matter. So Lorenzo says, well, Julian doesn't look at it that way. He feel like it's his kid and he wants to help the child. And he tells everything that Julian said about how the boy got snatched. And Isabel's like, snatched? And how he got put in this red car and the tattoo and all this and that. I'm like, oh, it's not like he was trying to tell everything, but goddamn, you talk too much. So Isabel, she taking it all in, but playing it off like you wouldn't even think nothing was going on. She got up to go make a phone call. So before Isabel makes this phone call, she has the same flashback about Lisa Beck that Julian had earlier. So they go through the whole spiel of him asking her what's on her clothes, and they go through the house and see all the blood. We see that she sees Lisa in the bathtub slumped over, and she stands there looking. We hear Julian in the background hollering for help. Someone please call 911. And then out of nowhere, we see creepy ass McGregor. And I'm like, oh my God. I couldn't believe it. I said, oh shoot. Could it be that this man is the one that Olga put out her car to let Julian drive and left him on the side of the road in the desert? But anyway, I got excited about that because I was like, ooh, my little theory, I was just throwing it out there, but hell, it could have been true. But so anyway, he goes and takes young Isabel and he sits her on the bed. And then he takes her shoes off, and of course they're highlighting the tattoo on his hand. Then he takes the shoes and he goes in the bathroom and closes the door and leave her sitting on the bed. And I couldn't understand that. The footprints that I thought I saw were quite bigger than her little feet. So what was the point of you taking her shoes off, or did I miss something? If someone can please explain that part, drop that in the comments, because I didn't understand why he took her shoes off. And I mean, the house still was messed up. I don't know. I didn't get it. So it's interesting to know that McGregor was either working with Olga back then, because we know that Isabel was actually 9 at the time, so when Lisa died. So it's been a long time. So has he been working for Olga this whole time and working with the Strattons? Like, everybody's connected. I thought that was interesting. So Isabel makes her phone call and the person answers. So she says, you have something that I want. Where are you? And we're going to assume that after she got all the necessary information from Lorenzo with his talking ass, that she made a phone call to McGregor. We got Detective Sunday in her office working hard, working around the clock. Then her captain comes and steps in the door. So she asks him, do they have a bolo? Do they have any news on the bolo for Panish? And he tells her they have units at his house and his office, so he'll be caught sooner or later. So then she asks him, does he remember anything about a witness that he interviewed back in 2006 named Tina Williams? He tells her no, he don't remember anything, but he'll get back with her, I guess, if he does. He be acting like he don't care. If it doesn't pertain to putting Julian's name on the murder, he don't want no parts. We see Panish. He's sitting in his truck listening to some voice message from the LAPD They're asking him to give them a call back regarding his statement about the hotel clerk. He is contemplating, he's thinking about it. He looks at McGregor's car because he's sitting in front of the hotel ready to drop the money off. But then I guess he's rethinking everything. He looks at the money, and I guess Panish says, forget all this shit, I'm hauling ass. So he pulls off. So Detective Sunday goes to visit the lady that her captain interviewed back in 2006. I don't know if her name was Tina or Gina, one of them. Tina or Gina Williams. Anyway, so they greet each other, they talk briefly or whatever. And she basically asked her, does she remember anything about that particular time frame? And the lady was like, you know, it was a long time ago, but hell, seemed like she remembered everything to me. So the bottom line is, when Detective Sunday asked for the description of the guy that she may have seen that night, she said that the guy was maybe medium height, wore a nice expensive suit, and he had this tattoo. And the reason that the tattoo stood out for her is because it didn't match the expensive suit. So Sunday was like, well, what did the tattoo look like? She said, like a large bird with wings. So once again, McGregor is attached to something else. So McGregor comes back into the room with food, looks like. So he takes the tape off of Colin's mouth, I guess to let him eat or whatever. So Colin says, have you spoken to my dad? And McGregor got all the jokes. He says, which dad are we talking about, kid? So Colin says, you know him? You know my real dad? Child, I guess McGregor said he don't have time to be listening to that foolishness. He put the tape right back over Colin's mouth and told him he talked too much. So Julian goes to see Gail. So they catch up real quick, and he basically asks her about the phone call that she had with Janet Holmes. And she tells her that Janet wanted her to go on record about Olga's operation, everything about it, about Julian, about her, everything. Because of her sister killing herself, she felt like Olga covered up the crime or covered up the death or whatever, and she needed to know what was going on about it. And basically that was it. So then we see Julian, he's speeding down the street, but he's having this flashback in his head trying to play back what happened. And we see a younger Lorenzo, giving Julian the job to go do, and the job was Janet Holmes, which we remember that was actually his last job, because after that night, he was going to go run away with Michelle. So Julian said, is Olga okay with this? And Lorenzo told him, yeah. So Lorenzo was the one who gave Julian the job to go be with Janet that particular night. So now we see Julian, present time, speeding down the highway, I guess to go and confront Lorenzo. So for the first time in the flashback with Janet Holmes, we see that Julian has been drugged. So at this point, we don't know if someone drugged him prior to him getting to Janet's house or Janet drugged him. She's asking him all kind of questions about how old was he when he got to Olga and all this and that, and he barely can answer her or even know what the hell she's talking about. And we see in this flashback that he actually passes out, and you can hear her trying to wake him up or something. So we see Panish, the police get behind him and pull him over. He's trying to cheese and smile on it, all in their face, talking about, was I speeding? What did I do? So anyway, one of the cops asked him what's in the bag. We don't hear his answer, but Panish is finally arrested. So Julian goes to confront Lorenzo just like we knew he would. And he's asking him, did you know that Janet Holmes was going to get killed that night when you gave me that slip? And he was like acting crazy, looking crazy, like he don't know what the hell was going on. And he was like, Olga gave you the job. I just gave you the slip. So Julian says, did you know that Janet was Lisa Beck's sister? So Lorenzo did kind of look like he didn't know anything about that. And Julian was like, I got framed. 15 years of my life was taken away from me. Then I get out and Olga gets killed. And he's like, did you do that too? And Lorenzo was like, wow, wow. The fact that you would even say some shit like that to me. And Julian was like, yeah, wow. And you and Isabel, y'all stay the fuck away from me. And Lorenzo told him, man, you're on your own now. And Julian said, hell, I always have been. So Sunday calls Julian as he's leaving from around Lorenzo, and she lets him know that Panish has been arrested, and Julian tells her, I don't even know who that is. Like, he has no clue who Panish is. So she tells him that he is Stratton's lawyer, and he is the one that tried to frame him for Elizabeth's murder, and they caught him trying to leave town with the $3 million. So Julian just said, well, just keep me posted. We get this long drawn out scene, which was really entirely too long, with Michelle and Stratton. We have to watch her swim. We have to watch Stratton watch her swim. He has to bring her a towel. I mean, what? We, bruh, we didn't have time for all of that. All at the end of the day, he wants to know, did she ever really love him? He wants to say he thought Colin would bring them closer together. He would give up all his watches if he thought that she would say they had a shot at being together again or something. I'm like, oh my God. All of a sudden you hear that over the intercom that they have a visitor. So, of course, who is the visitor? The visitor is Julian. They say that Julian is there because he claims to know something about their son. So they open the door for Julian, and Stratton and Michelle looking at Julian and Julian looking at them. I guess Stratton said, I don't have time to talk to you and your little boyfriend. So Stratton walks off. We see Panish and Detective Sunday sitting in the interrogation room. I guess she getting ready to get some answers out of him. Hope. So we go back over there with McGregor and Colin, and he gets this knock on the door. And who in the hell do you guys think it is? It can't be nobody other than Isabelle, of course. He opens the door. She comes in. She looks at Colin, and she is in amazement. And she looks at McGregor and says, you were right. He looks just like him. And she starts touching all over his face, and Colin looking like, get your dirty ass hands out my face. And that is where the episode ends. What do you guys think that Isabelle is going to do with Colin? Is she going to take him back to the sex palace and put him to work? He is 15, and that is the age his daddy started. Or is she going to use Colin to make the daddy come back to work for her? Ooh, I wonder. This was a great episode to me, with the exception of Michelle and Stratton's scenes. I really didn't understand what was really going on with, they just wasn't flowing with the episode. It just wasn't flowing right for me with them. But other than that, the episode was really good to me. Next week, we got the finale. We only have one left, so hopefully it's going to be jam-packed with information to finish this thing up. So I'll see you guys next week. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Peace.